friends. My name is Miss Kelly and I work for the Carroll County Public Library's Outreach Department. And I am excited to be back again with you today with another fun DIY project. I'm having a great time getting ready for my sensational seashells story time. Say that 3 times fast, just like She Sells Seashells by the Seashore. It's a tongue twister. Now, if you have already seen that story time, you know how much I love going to the beach on vacation. And one of my favorite things to do when I'm at the beach is to go walking along the shoreline, especially early in the morning, and find out what treasures the ocean has washed up onto the shore overnight. And sometimes you can find some really cool things. Of course you can find seashells. And here are just a few of the seashells I have found on my various trips. Some to New Jersey, or Delaware, or Maryland, or North Carolina, and some from even farther away. I love collecting shells. I also like to find other things along the shore. And then when I come back home, I carefully clean them and dry them to make sure that there's nothing smelly or stinky in there, no bits of animal or other trash, or just to make sure they're very clean. And there's some great instructions on how to clean your shells and take care of them that you can find in books at the library. There are a few examples of some books out here that you could check out right now at the Carroll County Public Library by going online and placing your holds and picking the books up through our express pickup service. And all the information about how to do that is on our website, library.carr.org. But if for one reason or another you're not able to come into the library to do that, you might want to check out some of the books that we have online. And here's an example of one that I found. I'm going to try and hold that up closer to the camera for you. And the title is Super Simple Seashell Projects. Again, it's hard to say it because it's all the tongue twister. But it has fun. It is a series of books that has fun and easy craft ideas inspired by nature. And this one is all about shells. And it gives directions for this project that I wanted to share with you today. So you might want to think about fun, creative things that you can do with your shells so that you have ways to enjoy them around your home, out in your yard. This project that I want to show you today is directions to make a paperweight. I don't know if you've ever seen a paperweight before, but basically what that is a heavy object that you use to weigh down a stack of papers, maybe on a desk or on a table. And that's one thing you can do with this project, but I decided instead of making mine as a paperweight, I'm going to make it as a table for my fairy garden. If you've watched some of my other videos, you know how much I love my fairy garden and making things for the fairies. So that's what I'm going to do with mine, but you can decide. You can imagine your own story and decide what you want to do with your object that you're going to make with your seashells. So this is a project you can do with simple ingredients that you have in your home. The only tools you need are very simple: a bowl, a baking pan, some measuring cups, and your hands. And I often say in the kitchen that your hands are your best tools. You always have them with you, right? Ready to go as long as they're clean. Now, this is something we're going to make with ingredients. Some of them are ingredients you can eat, not all of them, you'll see that. And we're going to bake it in the oven. So the first step in my process is to go to my oven and to preheat it to 200 degrees, which is a pretty low temperature compared to most of the time when we're cooking food recipes. A lot of times our oven is at a higher temperature, but we want to cook this low and slow, so that it hardens and dries out all the way through this dough object that we're going to make, and that way it will last for a long time. So while my oven is heating up, I'm going to talk you through the steps of making my fairy's new table. So we're going to measure some ingredients. into the bowl. The first thing, I went out into the sandbox in my backyard and got 1/2 cup of sand. And I'm gonna pour that into my bowl. And you know, friends, if you and your grown-ups are doing this project together, it's not just fun, it's not just creative, it's also a really great way to practice some of your math skills because you're learning about measuring and you're learning about doing things in sequence and finding out what happens when you add different things together. So it's really a great learning process, and to talk about the steps as you go along is also helpful. So we have 1/2 cup of sand. That's the part you can't eat, right? Blech, wouldn't want to eat sand. But it reminds you of the beach. The next ingredient, we need 2 cups of regular all-purpose flour. And so I'm going to dump 2 cups of flour into my bowl. If I were making a cake or cookies or something that I was going to eat with this flour, I'd be a lot more careful about how I'm measuring it and leveling it. But since this isn't as exacting of a recipe, we don't really have to do that. So 1 cup of sand, 2 cups of flour. The next ingredient we have is salt. And that can remind you of the ocean too, because of the salt water we have when we go to the ocean, right? That water is very salty. You would know that if you ever got it into your mouth at the beach. If you got caught underwater by a wave and it knocked you down, you get that sandy taste in your mouth, a salty taste in your mouth, I mean. There we go. So we're going to pour 1 cup of salt. So just fill up my measuring cup. It's a little clumped together, so it's having a hard time coming out. But there we go. I think we've got it now. So we'll pour that into our bowl. Now here's where our hands come into play. Remember we were talking about how our hands are our best tools. So I'm going to use my fingers and I'm going to reach down in that bowl and lift and mix, trying not to spill it out of the bowl, but it's okay if you get a little bit messy. It's not going to hurt anything. It feels nice. It feels a little bit like playing in the sand at the beach when you make a sand castle. Get your fingers down in there. And you want to just kind of evenly mix all those dry ingredients together. And so if I brush my hands off just a little bit into the bowl and hold that up for you, you can see it's just a plain mixture in there. Now for the fun part. I am going to add 1 cup of water into my bowl. Pour it in carefully. Try to get it all into the dish. And again, I'm going to get messy. Are you ready to get messy with me? All right, here we go. Mix, mix, mix. Ew! It feels, let's see, what does that feel like? It feels kind of wet and sticky. And you want to just mix, mix, mix with your fingers. You're trying to make a dough that will form into a ball. Let's see, it's getting stuck together. Getting stuck together. And now you can just experiment, because depending on different things, like was your sand dry or wet? Is it a super humid day like it is today, where there's a lot of moisture in the air? Different things can change the way a dough feels. And so if it feels like your dough is really dry and it won't stick together, you could add a little bit more water, just a little bit at a time, until you feel like you have a dough that really holds together. And on the other hand, if your dough feels way, way, way too wet and sticky, then you could add just a little bit more flour until you feel like you have a dough. It feels a little bit like bread dough, or if you haven't made bread before, it feels a little bit like Play-Doh. It's going to come together in my hands, and it really wants to stick to itself. So even though it was on my hands, when I do that with my hands and rub it against the thing, all that dough that was stuck to my fingers is coming off and sticking to my ball of dough. So there I go. I can set my bowl out of the way. And now I'm going to use the surface of my counter here. See how I made it into a ball? Can you guys see that? So now I'm going to pat it, roll it and pat it and mark it with the B. Patty cake, patty cake. I'm going to push it into a ball shape. Now, you could decide, maybe you want to take this ball of dough and make it into several different shapes. And in fact, I think I'm going to pull a little clump off. I think I'm going to make, remember I said I was going to make a table for my fairy garden? I'm going to shape a round circle of dough, flatten it with my hands, and place it in my pan. I'll hold it up for you so you can see it a little better in just a second. You see that? And I'm going to save this other part and make it into two so I can make some chairs for the fairy garden. So, but first we'll start with the table. So now comes the really creative part. We have our shape that we've made. We have it all flattened out and into the right design, the right shape. So now I'm going to choose from my tray of seashells to decorate my fairy's table. And I think she's going to have some of these beautiful scallop shells, one in the center, and I'm just going to take that and press it firmly down into the dough. And then I can put some cockle shells around it. And I can just choose any different colors I want. And it's fun to sort of think about, do I want to make a pattern? Maybe a cockle shell, and then a scallop shell, and maybe another cockle shell, and just alternate like that. That could be fun to make a pattern. The different colors on the shells are so pretty. And each one is unique and different, just like we are. Just like human beings are. So let's see, do I have one more little cockle shell there? I do. Now you could decide, do you want to have something real simple? Do you want to cover the whole surface? Do you want to put something around the edges? Like I happen to have some really tiny shells, and I'm going to take those and put them in between the larger shells. Let's see which ones I want to use. So that it kind of breaks up that pattern of the really large shells. I can decorate around them with some of these smaller ones and add them to different spots. There's really, again, when you are doing art projects or other creative projects, there are no rules about it, except that you need to have fun and use your imagination, right? Let's see, what else would be pretty on here? Oh, here's a tiny little snail shell. Ooh, I like this one. Boy, there's such infinite variety to these seashells. So when you think you have this decorated the way that you want it and everything is just right, let me see, I'm trying to see if I want to add one more little shell. Maybe this one. Okay, now my fairy table is ready to go in the oven and be baked. Can you see that? So it's going to go in. This is the part where you would need to have some help from a grown-up to carefully open your oven once it's preheated and put this in on the oven rack. And you're going to let it bake for 3 hours. I know, that's a long time. Really long time. But we want to make sure that that dough really gets hard and dried out all the way into the center so that it will last for a long time. Now, when that's finished baking, I'll take it out of the oven, set it on with the help of a grown-up again, and set it out on a rack to cool until it's completely cooled off. And then it's ready to take out and place in my garden. And when that happens, I'm going to take a nice photograph and I'll share it with you as part of my post. So you can find out about my finished product when you see the photo attached to this post. So have fun, go out and create and imagine your story. And don't forget, when you create something like this, you can record that activity on your summer reading program log on Beanstack. Again, if you go to our library website, library.car.org, you can find all the information about the summer reading program. And it runs all the way until August 31st, so you still have a little bit more time to get those activities and books and minutes logged so that you can win your free prizes, your 2 book prizes. So have a great time and have fun with your seashells. Thanks for watching. Bye.